So what I want to do today, since this is a conference on entrepreneurship, I thought I would give a little bit of a background on kind of the story of how Khan Academy started. I think some of y'all might be reasonably familiar. Actually, before I even start, how many of y'all have been to the site or watched a Khan Academy video? Or oh, very good. I think we have a very high penetration in our demographic. That's our. And I think it'll be interesting because I think the story of Khan Academy, more than almost most entrepreneurial stories, is kind of I don't want to say accidental. I want to think that some of it was somewhat by design. But it has been this kind of organic process, and it's still not 100% clear where all of this is going to lead to, although it seems like it could lead to something pretty exciting. So we can rewind back to 2004, and I was an analyst at a hedge fund in Boston. And my aunt and uncle and their children, my cousins, were visiting me from New Orleans. It was right after my wedding. I got married in New Jersey, went back to Boston, and they were visiting me. And the oldest of their children, Nadia, she was 12 years old. And it was 4th of July weekend in Boston. I don't know if any of y'all have been to Boston. They have a nice kind of 4th of July fireworks thing over the Charles River. And I distinctly remember while we were waiting for the fireworks to start, I was just killing time by giving my family brain teasers. The kind of brain teasers, that a good interview question at Google or, whatever. And I don't know if you've ever done this with your family, but some people say, oh, I don't care, I don't want to think right now, and all the rest. But I distinctly remember Nadia being she was 12 years old, and she's like, well, don't tell me the answer. I can figure it out. Can they see each other? What other say? She was at 12 years old, she was tackling these brain teasers as well as any 25-year-old computer science grad that I'd ever interviewed before. So I remember the next day we were touring the colleges and we went to MIT, and I remember telling Nadia, I was like, you should, I'm pretty impressed by how well you tackled a lot of those brain teasers yesterday. You should think about MIT. And I remember right when I said that, my aunt gave a little look to my uncle, and I wasn't sure what that look was about. Maybe it was something else, completely unrelated. But I remember that look, and the very next morning, my aunt Nusrat Auntie told me, Sal, thank you so much for believing in Nadia. It really means a lot. You're like a big brother to my children and a role model. But I thought I would let you know that Nadia is actually having trouble in math, that she's gotten great grades. She's a straight-A student, but she just took a placement exam. And she did not place into the kind of the standard track where you would take algebra in 8th grade and so on and so forth. She got placed into a slower track. And so I said, that's impossible. She was tackling stuff way more abstract and deep and thought-provoking 2 nights ago than anything that you could imagine covered in a 6th or 7th grade math class. So when Nadia woke up, I said, hey, Nadia, I have trouble believing this. What did you not understand? Why do you think you didn't do well in the placement exam? And Nadia said it was units, converting kilograms to grams and all of the rest. And I said, Nadia, I'm 100% you can tackle that. So what do you say when you go back to New Orleans and I stay in Boston, after my work and after your school, I tutor you. We do something over speakerphone. We'll figure out a way to be able to see what each other, what we're writing and all of that. And we ended up using Yahoo Doodle, and we started doing this. And it was kind of fun for me. I mean, even while I was at the hedge fund, I always have this, when anyone works at a hedge fund, you kind of have a rationale for why you're doing it. Although I do have an argument of how it actually does contribute to society, but that would take me longer than this talk. But I used to tell my friends I want to do this job long enough so that I could save enough money that I could start a school on my own terms. That was always something that was a little bit in the back of my mind. I didn't really have a sense of what that would mean, but it was kind of like this life ambition for me. And so it was fun for me to tutor my cousin because I was like, hey, I can start to warm up. I can start to work and help my cousins in the process. And the first month was difficult. I remember with Nadia, it was like, x plus 3 is equal to 10. What is x? And her answers were always like 7. Or I'd say, if you have 2 kilometers, how many meters? And she'd say 2,000. And I was like, are you sure? And it was this thing that she was a smart girl, but she just had no confidence. Anything outside of math, her brain was engaged. As soon as she got a kind of a formal math problem, it's like she didn't want to think. And there's a couple of things that I had done early on at that, and I don't talk a lot about this because the videos are what Khan Academy is most known for, is very early on, I was like, I want to make something for Nadia so that I can make sure she has 100% proficiency of the core stuff, so that she doesn't answer every question with another question. So I wrote this little thing, this little JavaScript question generator for her that literally give her as many units problems as necessary until she should get 10 in a row, or as many basic algebra or exponents or whatever, any of these core skills. And then the next day on our tutoring session, I'd say, well, did you do the problems? And she would say, oh, yeah, I did them, and I didn't really believe her. So I put a database behind it so I could keep track of when she did the problems, how much time was it taking her, and all the rest. Very simple stuff at this point. And then I started making one module after another. And I mean, this was literally like a dedicated software effort for one 12-year-old at the time. But she eventually did progress through the tutoring and the software, which had no, the videos aren't even on the radar at this point. Then I started to tutor her younger brothers, more and more family members. It was kind of this fun thing. I mean, sometimes when I'd call up a distant relative, I was like, can I tutor your kids? They thought that there was some type of strange catch to it, but they're like, Sal must not be doing well in this hedge fund thing. But you fast forward now to 2006. I had this like cohort of like 20 or 30 kids around the country that different time zones. I still had a day job, and I would come home and I'd try to tutor them all and do these sessions. I would try to do these conference calls with more than one student. That got tricky. And I vented at a dinner party, and one of my buddies, Zuli, says, why don't you just record some of your lectures on YouTube? And I said, no, not YouTube. That's for dogs on skateboards. That's not for serious mathematics. But then I kind of went home, and once I got over the idea that it wasn't my idea, I decided to give it a shot. And I put those first YouTube videos up there. I think it was greatest common divisor or least common multiple. And I started doing a bunch of them, 20 or 30, the same stuff that I was covering with my cousins at the time. And a couple of things happened. And I joke about this a lot, but it's absolutely true. The first feedback I got from my cousins was that they liked me better on YouTube than in person. And I'm hoping it's only in kind of an education tutorial context, but it actually makes a lot of sense. They could pause, they could repeat. There's a lot to be said about human interaction. There's a lot to be said about kind of human mentorship, and I think they value that. They value the fact that their cousin, who was in Boston, who had a job, who was married, took the time out of his day to care about their lives. That definitely was a positive for them. But I could tell just from my interactions that the actual tutoring session was super stressful. When, no one wants to say that they don't understand. No one wants their cousin to feel like, oh, maybe Nadia isn't worth the time, or maybe she's wasting my time. And so all of a sudden they could do it in a de-stressed environment. And then when we had our live sessions, it was just really for questions. The other thing that happened is I started getting letters from people. I just randomly put it on YouTube. I remember that first time YouTube says, do you want to make these private or public? And I was like, I don't care, public. And other people started to watch. At first I was suspicious because I told 4 cousins to watch the video, and like 6 people would watch it. And I was like, who are these 2 people that are watching my videos? I don't know if you ever saw Julia and Julia, where she wrote a blog and she keeps refreshing it to see if people are watching. That was me in 2006. And but then all of a sudden it became clear that definitely people who I wasn't related to were watching the videos. And then they started to comment. They started to say thank you. Which that by itself is huge, because I don't know if you've seen most of the comments on YouTube. They're not all G-rated. And frankly, I think even if I was a physical teacher, just to get a thank you from a student every now and then, that's a pretty powerful idea. And so I would start getting these thank yous. But then the comments would be like, I was going to flunk algebra, now I'm the top student in algebra because I watched those 4 videos. And I was like, my God, I was sleeping or taking a nap or shaving or something, and this person was able to learn algebra. That's a pretty profound idea. And so you can imagine, I just got excited, and I just kept going. When I started off, I didn't think this was, there's something in my head that says this is a neat idea. I can make that video on least common multiple once, and it's there forever. And my cousins can use it, and even if no one else uses it, it's kind of a nice little thing for the family. Maybe my grandkids could eventually use it, or my great-great-grandkids. It'd kind of be like this neat thing. And maybe in the future, other people might actually want it. So I just kept going. And actually, I was building out the software at the same time until you fast forward to, and in the software, it's funny because I made all of these modules, and then as you can tell, a lot of this has come out of being lazy. I got tired of assigning the modules to my cousins. I was like, because before I was like, okay, Nadia, now that you've got 10 in a row on this, you're now ready for this module. Now that you've gotten 10 in a row on negative numbers, you're now ready for fractions. And that got tiring for me, so I set them up in this kind of graph structure, and so it would automatically assign them. Once you got 10 in a row on this, you're now ready for these modules. Once you get 10 in a row on those, you're not ready for those modules. And I said, well, this is kind of a neat graph structure. I had it visually displayed for myself so I could keep track of all these modules. I said, let me have my cousins look at them. And so once again, they liked that they could see where they were going and what they needed to do to understand, to eventually get to trigonometry or eventually get to geometry or whatever. I had that out there, and this is another probably thing not to do if you're trying to, and I wasn't trying to start a business or a not-for-profit at this point, but that software alone got so popular by 2007 that it was taking down my $50 a month web hosting. And my brilliant entrepreneurial mind said, oh, then I'll just turn it off. Instead of paying $100 a month. That happened. The video traffic kept growing, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, until you fast forward to 2008. And then some interesting, even across this, some interesting things started to happen. I started getting letters from teachers. Because once again, I thought this is just for my cousins, whatever. But teachers started saying, you already gave the lecture on adding fractions. I don't have to give the lecture anymore. So now I'm assigning these for my students, and then I use my class time, the teacher's class time, to actually interact with my students, to actually kind of flip the classroom. So now the students can do homework while they're in the room and get the lecture at home at their own pace and get all the benefits that my cousins had, the reason why they liked them to begin with. And so you fast forward to 2009, and this whole thing just got kind of too exciting. And I had trouble focusing on generating alpha in my day job. And so this is probably the fourth iteration where I kind of was tempted to quit my job. The previous three, we kind of looked at our finances and says, no, we can't. But by the fourth, we're like, it wouldn't be completely ridiculous to try this out for a year. And my rationale was, at this point, I was like, there is something here. Because, at this point, I was getting hundreds of letters a day. And these were not letters of someone saying, oh, this was nice to have, this helped me review for an exam. Some of these letters were like, this is the reason why I could go to college, or this is the only reason why I'm able to pass class X, Y, or Z. And so I was like, there's something here. Made the decision to make it a not-for-profit, just because really I wanted as many people as possible to use it. And so I was thinking, there's so much worry about education right now. Let me just keep doing it. And I took the most naive approach to starting a not-for-profit, or really starting a business. I just kept making videos and hoping someone would notice. And so 2009, I did that. You fast forward. Luckily, by May, June, July, August of 2009, people began to notice. Google brought me in. They said, a lot of our engineers, a lot of our people here, they like to use your videos with their kids. Would you be willing to talk to us? So I go to Google, and halfway into the meeting, they're like, so what would you do if with $2 million? And I said, is this in an education context or just a broader question of what I would do with very different answers. But it was clear it was about education. And so I said, I would, beyond giving myself a salary, I would build out that software platform that I started off for my cousins so that students can all work at their own pace, so that teachers can get data and analytics on what the students are up to, so that we could take this model that these teachers had already started experimenting with, this model of flipping the classroom and kind of supercharging it with the software. So if you have the software, now whether you're at home or you're at school, every kid could work at their own pace. In the same classroom, you could have kids doing fifth grade math and kids doing trigonometry. And the teacher's role will now not be to grade papers, not to be lecturer, but to spend every moment of their time interacting with students, having the students every moment of their time not sitting passively in a room waiting for the period to end, but to actually interact with each other and maybe tutor each other. And so they liked the idea. So it looked like that funding process was happening, although that didn't happen until later on. And this is a lesson I learned, and I only have one experience in this, but it's like one of these things where there's a period of time where you think, boy, someone needs to notice this, and you think you're doing something that's pretty cool, and your customers or your students or whatever is like, this is a life-changing thing, and you're doing it, but no one else is noticing. And at some point, like 9 months into it, I was getting pretty insecure. I was getting like, you know, I need to start updating my resume. I don't know if the hedge fund world will hire me back because I've done this flaky thing, and all of this stuff. But then once all of a sudden it did hit, it was kind of crazy, because it was literally in the same, you know, Google looked like that process was going. Ann and John Doerr, actually they were the first to say, you at minimum deserve a salary. And then in August of 2010, so this is very recent. This is like last year. I think it was July or August. I get a text from Ann. She was at the Aspen Institute saying, Bill Gates is in front of 2,000 people talking about you right now. And I said, that prankster Ann. Or maybe that text was sent to the wrong person, because it was a very surreal idea. But later on, about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Mr. Gates' office saying, you may or may not know, but Bill's a fan. He uses these videos himself, and he uses them with his kids. And immediately when they said that, I was like, I better review some of those videos and see what I've said. But he said, and he would like to meet if you have some time. And I was literally staring at a blank calendar. And I was like, oh yeah, I think I can move a few things around, and you know, we should be able to figure out something. And so we met, and he asked how he could support, and I was like, well, you know, it would be nice to come out of the closet, so to speak. And so I was recording in the closet. That's the so he supported us. We got office space. We have a team, and then Google came in, and now we are essentially a team. We're 8 people now. We're based in downtown Mountain View, and we're building out this software platform and videos. I keep making videos to kind of provide an education for anyone, anywhere. And we've started a pilot in Los Altos. Once again, we didn't think our strategy was, you know, go into classrooms right from the get-go. We were focused on the end student. You know, the millions of students are out there right now. We have 2 million students using it on their own every month. But Los Altos came to us and said, what would you do in a classroom if you had carte blanche? And we said, look, we're building this thing. Every kid work at their own pace. We didn't think they would be into it, but the next day they said, yeah, can we start in 2 weeks? And so we have 2 5th grade classes, 2 7th grade classes in Los Altos now, and it's been pretty tremendous. I think all of the indicators, and we could talk maybe more about that later, have been very positive. You know, just to give a little bit of a clue of kind of the power of this is very recently a reporter came to one of the classrooms to just do a story on us, and she saw a 5th grader in one of those classrooms doing trigonometry, just sitting there doing trigonometry problems, you know, very casually, and the reporter's very impressed. And so she sits down next to the 5th grader and says, so do you think that this is 5th grade math? And then the little girl has this very mischievous look on her face, and she goes, no, I think it's 6th grade. So now going forward, I think our strategy is 2 things, and our strategy frankly changes every week. But the strategy is 2 things: is build out our software platform. We're actually translating into 10 languages. So it can reach more than just the English speakers of the world. Build out the software platform. So right now, the exercises go deep. They go into, you saw in the video, they go into vector calculus and biology and college chemistry and history and all the rest. But have the exercise platform first go through K through calculus, and then beyond that, college level math, then chemistry, biology, physics, all the rest. And build out what we're doing in these schools. So over the next year, we're going to go to about 10 to 15 schools and school districts to kind of expand this Los Altos idea and see how we can really transform what happens in the classroom. So that's kind of an update on what we're up to, and I think now we can I believe there's going to be a Q&A part of this. Yeah.
Outstanding, Sal. Now, for those of you living in the Bay Area, the person who's going to have a chat with Sal needs no introduction. 3-time Emmy Award-winning Raj Mithai, who just 3 months ago was named news anchor for NBC Bay Area, and he was a very well-regarded sportscaster for a number of years with that station. So let me welcome to the stage Raj Mithai.
Hello, everyone. Should we sit? Is this what we're doing? So first of all, is he a stand-up comedian or an educator? This is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful.
No. But by virtue of my name, I feel the desire to entertain. But I will keep my shirt on. That's my only. If you're, yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up, because the first thing this morning, I'm putting on my suit, getting ready to come here, and my wife says, what's happening today? I said, I'm going to the TiEcon event, and we're going to spend part of the afternoon with Salman Khan. And she dropped to the floor. Raced to the closet. What am I going to wear? You're coming with me? I said, no, the real Salman Khan, who will have more of an impact, I think, than the other one, right?
You know, if you want a really if you want a really surreal story, so apparently Bill Gates did a search for Salman Khan, and he forwarded his entire organization, the other guy, saying, did you know there's another Salman Khan? And just the idea of seeing Bill Gates look at Salman Khan without his shirt on was a very dissonant, anyway, it's not about him, but yeah.
Well, I think like so many people, like everyone here in the audience, I too, just backstage, just captivated about your story. And this isn't the first time that I've heard about your story. I've been following you for a while now. So what happens now? Here we are, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of venture capitalists, and one of the big questions is, okay, this is great, it seems very successful, but it's not for profit. So at what point...
What is it for then?
At what point do you turn the corner if that point is even on your radar?
Yeah, no, we're definitely not going to turn. This isn't like a bait and switch. We're not going to, be not for profit at some point. I think I would have to do something pretty shady at this point to actually turn it into a for profit. No, the simple answer is no. We're going to stay not for profit. The decision early on was. And I think a lot of y'all can, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with for-profit. I obviously worked in a very for-profit industry before this. It was pretty much, that's all it was for.
That's the next session at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. Stock tips from, no, but early on, even it was in 2008 actually, some VCs had approached me, and it was actually pretty exciting. Conversation number one, because they said, hey, this is awesome. We can fund this, you'll be able to get a salary, you can keep doing these videos full time, you don't have to find all the spare time to do it, and we can do, it'll be a double bottom line business, or we can do a social venture, whatever you want to call it, and if it works out, you'll be rich. And that didn't sound bad to me, so we scheduled another meeting, but it was obvious by meeting 2 that there was just something that wasn't. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but I was just enjoying this so much. I mean, it was really kind of like why I woke up in the morning. And by meeting 2, the conversation started to become like, well, you should continue doing this, but we should focus more on test prep, and maybe we could charge for this, or have a subscription model, or freemium, or whatever you want to call it. And, I'm not saying that they were wrong or bad, but I just started, it didn't feel as fun all of a sudden. And so I was just like, hold on, yeah, maybe we'll just wait on this, see where it goes. And then you fast forward a little bit more, all the way to 2009, and I talked to a few other VCs, and I just went through kind of an introspective process. Because, like I said in the talk, one of the really fun things about this was the idea that that people were saying thank you, that people were, that my great-grandkids could use this, that kids all over the world could use this really for all of time, that even if I got hit by a bus, these things could keep teaching. And so I went through the thought experiment of, well, what's a home run in either situation? A home run in the for-profit world, which isn't a bad thing, I mean, it's by no means certain, is, wow, you become this major player, you IPO, or you get acquired, and I think I would feel pretty good about that. I would have created a big business. I'm sure that would have reached many people. I would have become rich, which wouldn't have been bad. But then when you think about the home run on the not-for-profit side, it was even a little more exciting. Is that there's kind of this opportunity here, maybe, to start an institution, to start something that could last maybe hundreds of years. I mean, this is what I told my wife, is that, there are no for-profit entities that last more than, very few last more than a century. But there are not-profit entities that do. And, not to put Khan Academy in the same league as these organizations, but, would I rather start a GE or would I rather start a Stanford? And when I thought about it that way, I was like, it would kind of be more exciting to start the latter. And so that's the not-for-profit idea.
And it's interesting, your background. It's interesting you bring up Stanford, even your own CV, MIT, and then to Harvard. You are talking about real traditional institutions here. And what you're doing, in many ways, can be viewed as very untraditional, how you're educating people. Is there a negative side of this? Have you gotten some pushback, whether it's from the traditional education community or anyone else in the community?
You know, right now, and luckily, and I expected a lot more pushback, especially when we go into schools and all, but well, the fun thing is, the core thing what we're doing, we're going straight to the student, or straight to the parent, so we don't have to get buy-in from a lot. But even in the schools, we're dealing with the schools that have wanted to do it. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. And I think the only resistance we get is sometimes when people see, you know, just kind of it on the surface, and they say, oh wait, lectures on video, they're going into classrooms, wait, this is here to replace teachers, or this is somehow going to, you know, mechanize the classroom. But I think when people, what we're saying is, no, it's the exact opposite. These videos and the software, they're actually about to kind of rehumanize the classroom. Instead of having a teacher up here giving a lecture and students down there passively listening, we're offloading all of that with the technology, and now class time becomes interactive. We can tutor each other, the teacher's gonna walk by, every moment of their time is going to be mentoring each other. There's data, there's analytics, so that any intervention that the teacher does is very productive. So the teachers who've experienced it, they've told us this is why they became teachers in the first place. So yeah, I think the only resistance is just the knee-jerk reaction. But when they actually see what we're doing, we're actually all about empowering teachers.
Do you think there will be some resistance, even more so, as Khan Academy gets more well-known? Right now it's well-known,
Yes.
but it's going to get to that next level where people, especially now, the economic climate in this country, where there's so many budget cuts, there's so much bad blood going back and forth. Do you expect some resistance? Because I'm sure there will be at some point around the corner.
Yeah, you know, and that, we have to be careful there, because obviously education is a very politically charged thing, and we're trying our best to stay out of the arguments. We think regardless of where everything else settles, we can be relevant. But, you know, I don't want to, maybe it will develop. I'm not, you know, but we haven't seen it in a strong way just yet.
Okay. In terms of the subject matter now, you're doing all these videos by yourself. I'm a TV guy. I get a sore throat by talking a lot. So when you plan on expanding, are you just going to start bringing in other experts in various subjects?
So you know, based on what our focus is in the short term, we don't view that as a gating factor. I keep making videos. This is fun for me because there's some stuff I know, and then there's some stuff I get to learn, and I get to keep teaching it, and all the rest. And you know, even just one guy can do K through calculus plus chemistry, biology, and physics on the course of about 3 man years. So it is this very scalable thing. But with that said, we are starting to look for other potential lecturers. And I'll even say this audience, we're translating into 10 languages, Hindi, Bengali, we've already started on, and we want to do other languages. And so there's an opportunity, one, to help redo the videos in those languages, or even teach in those languages. You know, one thing that we're missing is basic literacy videos, but in like the context of the developing world, that's super important. So yeah, we are looking to bring other people in the fold. The one thing we're not looking to do is, we don't want to be this crowdsourced hundreds, thousands of teachers, where, you know, the student watches one video from one teacher and then another video from another teacher, and it's a different quality, because that's first of all, that already exists. I mean, YouTube is that to some degree. There's other sites that do that. And we think that our niche is really a bond with the teacher. I mean, it's crazy because it's technology, but we think we can actually form a bond with the students. And so people, once they watch 10, 20, 30 videos from the same teacher, they're willing to invest their time and their emotional energy into it.
You can obviously sell and teach this product amazingly because it's your product, and you have a dynamic personality and obviously very intelligent. How do you bring the next person in there to do the tutorial?
Well, yeah, it's an open question. We're kind of doing, there's a guy who, well.
Like American Idol casting call?
We're thinking about that, yeah, like teaching Idol. That's the way to, there's a couple of people who there's some guys who are video bloggers who are pretty hilarious and intellectual and stuff, and they want to try it out, so we'll see how they do. And there's a guy I knew from MIT who's computer science. He's been teaching computer science. I think he's got a lot of potential, but we're not in a rush to find these teachers. We want to take our time and find people who really resonate with students.
Your biggest fear moving forward? Obviously, there's been a lot of success now, but is there something in the back of your mind that you're curious about, that maybe a little fearful about as you move forward with this?
Yeah, I think that, well, you know, I think any organization at our stage, you don't want to be a flash in the pan. You don't want to, I mean, I told you, the ambition is to be something that lasts 100 years. It'll be sad if we don't last 3 years, right? So our main thing is, like, let's just make sure that we are continuing to drive value, that we don't get caught up in these other things, that I don't make the focus of me just going on TV and talking about education reform and becoming a policy person or something like that. So I think where we are right now, we're at this kind of inflection point. I think our main goal is to always just, put the blinders on, stay focused on really what got us to this point, which is really the end student, and making sure that we continue to add value for that student, and then the people who want to empower them, their parents and their teachers.
In the Bay Area here, a lot of us are familiar with school districts that aren't as successful, whether it's in East Oakland or in East Palo Alto. Are you going to try to target specific types of areas demographically, perhaps?
Yeah, and we are focused mainly on the Bay Area. We're looking all over the country and actually the world. We're going a few international schools. But what we're looking to do, Los Altos is obviously not a community in need. But what was really good about Los Altos, although two of the seventh grade classes we did were actually slower tracked kids, and they've actually been doing tremendous. It's actually, they've shown even more profound results. So, even Los Altos isn't all uniformly affluent and well-heeled. But what we're looking to do is other use cases, less well-heeled neighborhoods, charter schools, private schools, public schools, all of the above. But the one theme that we do want in all these schools is that there's buy-in. That it's not just the mayor or the superintendent who's forcing it down, that the mayor, the superintendent, the principals, the teachers, and the parents all really, really, really want this. Because, about the flash in the pan, I think our biggest risk is, some school kind of halfway implements it, and then it's a disaster. And then, everyone points at that and says, look, it doesn't work. And I think that, that would be a disaster not just for us, but I think for the whole idea behind it, which I think has a lot of power. So our goal over the next 10 to 15 school districts is just to make sure that they're unambiguous successes like Los Altos.
What about you for the actual content of it? I mean, like any teacher, and you are a teacher, you have to stay fresh and current and even continue to learn about your own topics. How do you do that? Is that part of your day every day?
Yeah, no, there's some stuff that I know, by virtue of my background, but there's some stuff like organic chemistry, where I took it and I did all right in the class when I took it in college, but a lot of people are asking for organic chemistry. It's like one of these core classes. Every pre-med and a lot of science majors take this. And there's actually no organic chemistry videos on the web. There aren't even bad ones out there. And, and so I said, I need to learn organic chemistry. But the one thing that I emphasize is I don't want to teach something unless I'm excited about it. I mean, we've all experienced a teacher at the front of the classroom who's like, the next step in the process is that, and you're like, if he doesn't give a damn, why should I? So I won't do a video unless I'm excited about it. And the first day of studying organic chemistry, I was not that excited about it. But actually, once I immersed myself and really started thinking about it and really started drawing the intuition, it started to get exciting. So I kind of immerse myself in subjects that I don't know. I'll call up buddies that I think might be able to connect some dots for me. And then once I feel like I have a holistic picture, then I'll just start recording. And I force a smile on my face, and I do it. But hopefully it shows up in the videos.
Well, like so many people here, we saw Vinod Khosla here last night and talking about just taking a risk, going against the grain, going against the analysts that tell you one thing. You obviously are doing that. What's the spirit? What was I don't know about pushback, but when you tell your Indian parents, I'm leaving this hedge fund and my MIT and Harvard education, and I'm going to do this thing on YouTube. Was Bete, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because when my wife she's finishing up her fellowship at Stanford right now, but when I first told people that, especially at Desi parties, that I had, oh, what do you do? I make videos on YouTube. And I've actually heard this, that when they hear I've heard them, well, at least his wife's is a doctor.
Yes.
So
it's interesting though, right?
I mean, thank God my wife's a doctor. But it's although a resident, she wasn't making the. But anyway, it's the day after I mean, my mother's very supportive of it now. But the day after I officially had quit, and I actually did not consult my mother, not like a good Desi son, but my mother called my wife and my mother-in-law and said, what? How did you let him do this? And but no, everyone's really pumped about it now.
As you look around in this room now, is there something a message that you would want to kind of to give to people here as you see what you're doing and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I mean, there's a broader message about entrepreneurship, and I think that's, and I have a kind of a singular story. I think there's multiple ways, obviously, to kind of start something. But my story, as you can tell, it was just me trying to reach a need, and it was exciting for me when just a handful of my cousins were obviously benefiting from it, and that was enough. I was happy with just that small success. It was worth my time to build it then, and I think the lesson is, whatever you do, hopefully there's some small subset of people who find it life-changing for them, maybe, or in some way very compelling. And then if you have that, then it makes it worthwhile for you to do it. And then you kind of don't care how long. I mean, there's a possibility that in 2004 I said, I'm going to start this online video platform, and I'm going to get venture funding and all of that. And I maybe would have written a business plan, worked at it for 6 months, and then if I didn't get traction, I would have given up. And because I kind of was happy with the small successes, I was able to pursue it for 5 years before I quit my job, and then even I was pumped about pursuing it afterwards. So it's one of these things where it was kind of one of this unkillable ventures, and that's, I think that's one of those things that, make venture succeed. There's a lot of things, a lot of ideas that people have, and the ideas kind of go up, and it pitters out, and then it dies, and then 8 years later, you see it actually becomes very successful. And so I think there's something to said about maybe designing something so it has a staying power.
Before the call from Bill Gates, before all the clicks, when it was just with your family, what kept you motivated by doing this? Because yes, you quit a job, a good salary job to do this.
Well, and at that point, I did not quit, so I am a practical person there. But it was worth my time to do it. I was still spending probably 15 hours a week with a day job doing this for my cousins, but it was...
What was that leap of faith moment? Was there a point when you finally looked and said, you know what, I can do this, I want to do this?
Yeah.
What was that leap of faith moment?
Well, that became pretty clear in 2007, 2008, when other people were watching it, and my cousins were, Nadia, not to show off, but she ended up taking calculus her freshman year in high school, and we went from being, a slow. So I mean, when you see that with just one student, you're like, this could be transformational. And so that by itself made it worthwhile. You start getting the letters from students, and then really, I had to wait until 2009 because the success of the site, balanced off with our own financial risk, is what that was the point where it just became hard for me to focus on anything else.
So when you talk about these cousins now, where are they, and are they kind of your role models here of
so I tell Nadia on a regular basis, you better be successful, because there's a lot riding on this. But she's now at Sarah Lawrence, and some of you the SC parents might cringe, but she's a writing major, but she's also pre-med.
Really?
And what I say is she's a writing major by choice, because she's actually a math rock star.
And pre-med by heritage.
And pre-med by heritage, exactly. Exactly.
As we wrap it up here, the next phone call from Bill Gates or whoever it is, when they ask you how you're doing, have you gotten better in these last few years? Because I would imagine you have with your tutorials. Do you look back on those first tutorials and you're like, oh gosh, I'm much better now?
Some of the early ones, I was like, for my cousins, they're not going to pay me. And I literally answer a telemarketer call in one of those early videos, and I don't edit it out. It's just like, no, I don't want Dish Networks, and I hang up. You could edit that out. I don't want to get sued by Dish Networks. Now, Bill Gates is watching these videos. I feel like maybe it should be a little nicer and a little bit more thought out. But I think one of the things that captured people's imagination early on is that it does feel personal. It does feel like there's just this guy recording. It doesn't feel like this publishing company is doing these computer graphics and doing all of these, and the next step in photosynthesis is when the mitochondria. This feels like this very organic thing, and so I think we want to make it more nicer, easier to watch, more polished, but we don't want to make it too polished, I guess.
And that's a very good point. There's that fine line now of bringing in the TV cameras, the earpieces, the makeup, and so forth. Are you flirting with that line yet, or is it still kind of you want to stay organic?
We always want to be organic. A guy at his kind of this screen capture board, or gal, explaining the concepts in real time, not with a script. We might experiment with other things for maybe history or literature, but for the most part, it's going to be the same thing.
Okay, Sal, pleasure to spend some time with you this afternoon. I think I speak for the entire room. Good luck, continued success.
Oh, great.